Welcome back, Game Brigade community. Welcome back to the show. My name is Brian, and today we're going to be diving into the Collector's Edition Bestiary of Sigillum by Crow D Games, designed by Peter Vibe. This is going to be a retail release available at GenCon, just coming up around the corner, and I'm going to be going over some of the details of this game, which I've already covered. If you want to see my original video, boop, you can check it out right here. But we're going to be talking about some of the differences that we saw from my prototype and the initial crowdfunding release as to what we see now with the Collector's Edition and this retail release. So if you're looking for an incredible strategy dueling game where you play against another player using different types of strategy and skills, this video might be something you will be interested in. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so I already mentioned that I covered Bestiary of Sigillum. In fact, I still have my prototype, and I would probably rate that this was my most enjoyable prototype that I played of last year. I really enjoyed the system and the puzzle that was presented here with Bestiary of Sigillum. I have a review first impressions video I mentioned at the beginning of this video, but again, remember to click the tab or check in the description down below if you'd like to see my full breakdown and thoughts regarding this system. Now, there has been some changes from what I originally played with some additional add-ons, and so we're going to be covering those here, kind of talking about what I've liked or potentially don't like. Most of this stuff is pretty good as we go through the system. So for those of you who are new to the Bestiary of Sigillum experience, what are we looking at? Well, this is a system that's either 1, 2, or 4 players, where you are going to be taking control of a faction, a unit, a band of units, attempting to destroy your opponent's castles. This is placed on this hex grid board. There are additional boards now, which is great to see. It's some additional boards for us to play with. And to do this, you are going to be using and activating the abilities of your characters. Now, that's where the charm of this game comes in. We have a whole stack of characters available to us to play. In fact, the total amount of characters that are available in the Collector's Edition is 36 available characters, all with their own unique abilities and strategies as how they will interact with your group and your opponent's group. So that's really cool. So the way we do our activations, here on the board we have 3 available actions. Your top action is your basic action. It's your core ability. It's usually just your basic move or basic attack, providing what your character does. So you either slide it to the left if I want to move my character 1 hex, or I would slide it to the right, targeting and dealing damage to a character, but based on the rules that it says. For example, Armis here says an enemy in an adjacent hex attack for 1 damage. So if I have Armis here in the forest, I could attack this character to deal 1 damage, and then based on what this character does, they can either, based on their defense level or whatever, they will either take a damage or not. It depends, again, of course, on how the role of the game plays. But other than that, we have 2 special character abilities. So we'll keep with Armis here. Armis has charge. You will target an enemy in adjacent hex. So let's bring this character up here. She'll place her in the water. We'll target a character in adjacent hex. And it says, move the target into an adjacent unoccupied hex in a straight line away from Armis. Then move Armis into the target's previous hex. If the target has nowhere to move, it will become stunned. So if I were to use this ability, I will place it on the 3 slot over here, pushing this character back, but because this is actually an occupied hex, we will push him there, and then Armis will move forward. So it's a way to kind of push forward. But if this character was here, it wouldn't be able to move backwards because there's just not a playable hex here. This character would receive a stun token because you're effectively bashing this character into the wall, preventing them. Now, you'll see I placed my token over here. This is the time wheel. And this is basically the cooldown area for your abilities. So whoever the first player is going to be the keeper of this time wheel, and they will slide this timer over each round. And when the arrow points to your ability, when it comes back around, so after 3 turns in this case, I will have that ability refreshed and brought back to my player board for additional uses. Every character has a different cooldown on their abilities. Some cooldowns are affected by conditions. Some of them might be if you're in water when you activate this, reduce your cooldown, etc. So there's a lot of different ways that you want to implement your character and utilize the strategy. So that's the overview of the game. Effectively, what you're trying to do, as I said, is reduce your opponent's castle down to 0. You do that by eliminating your opponent's characters, who will then respawn, but that respawn effect will deal a damage, or controlling these neutral towers, who will deal 1 damage if you control them. The control is held by who has the most units in the control sphere. The control sphere is new in terms of, not new, but it's the new maps will have different depending variables of what is considered the control sphere. But a default map, it's the adjacent hexes next to it. So whoever has the most control power adjacent to the tower or on the tower's hex itself will control it. Now, when I said control power, every character's control power defaults to 1. But as I mentioned here, there are abilities that you might increase your character's, a specific character's control to 2, 3, 4, so that character becomes more valuable to holding towers or whatever. So if you control a tower, these towers will also deal an additional damage to your opponent's castle, helping you kill them faster. So these are kind of the points that you're going to be pushing to. So that's the core game, and that's what I was able to experience with my prototype going through it. Now let's kind of talk about what the Collector's Edition is offering to kind of give players some more depth to their game and more enriched experience. The first thing I want to talk about with that are the additional maps we've been given. So I had the original map that's right here. This is also reversible to have a different side to it, so you can have a 4-player game. So let's reverse that over here. And in the 4-player game, your spawn points are going to be in these corners, and you will have an additional character as well. So each player would have access to 2 characters. So there would be 4 characters in total on this board. So this was what we originally had to play with. Now we've got 3 additional boards to work with. Each one of these is also double-sided, and these all also have some sort of unique special rules. For example, this one has these water hexes. They're kind of whirlpools. These actually are linked. So you're able to go from here to here or here to here, but because of that, it reduces the control value for the tower. These do not count as control points. The whirlpools do not include those, so they have a little bit less control for the whirlpool actions. Next, on this board, for example, I'm not going to go through every board, but I'm just giving you an example. This is a board that deals with time. So inside these 2 towers that deal damage also are time affecting mechanisms. What does that mean? Well, let's say my character is on this ability, on this hex spot, and I use one of my secondary special abilities, one of the ones I referenced down here that have those cooldowns. If you're on the time clock, it'll reduce that ability's cooldown by 1. So if it was a 3, now it technically will have a cooldown of 2. If you're on one of the silver plates, there's no effect. It treats it like normal. But if you're on a bronze plate and you use your ability, it's affected by 1+. So my cooldown of 3 will actually be 4. And if I'm on my starting castle spot, it's actually +2 for my ability. So you can't just spawn in, use your ability. Or you could, but it's just going to be forever until your ability is up. And these are to a maximum of 1 time. So you can't have a free cooldown. So even if your cooldown was 1 and you're on the center, it doesn't go to 0, it still stays a 1. And then to a maximum of 6. 6 is the cooldown number on here. So if you were already a 5 and you had an ability here that get +2, it's going to stay at 6. It's not going to go to 7 because that doesn't exist in this system. So that's one of the cool features that's added in. On top of that, we have 3 new compendium books to go along with this system. These books have different options. I'm going to talk about Distant Lands first. Distant Lands really goes into details of all of these additional maps, talking about the options and how they are workable. It also talks about the new fortresses that you can actually, your castle faction that you can go with. So these are basically additional, like adding in another character for you to play with. But it's going to be referencing your base that you're going to be spawning at. And it's going to have an ability that is unlocked. So the original ability, the top one here, is available. But as soon as my castle takes enough damage, the second ability will trigger. And then when it gets to this final damage point, the third ability is now available. So this gives players another piece of strategy for them to work around, finding which castle maybe they want to draft and play with for the specific scenario. So I think that's really cool, a cool little module that they've added in. They added another module that's also part of Distant Lands with these terrain tiles. They're basically terraformable tiles where you can have an ability that might place a terraform tile onto a piece of board to change the makeup of that space. This is important because remember, sometimes characters like Aquas has any adjacent unoccupied water hex. Well, let's say we're back on the other side of the map. Let's just go back to the other map, which has water, to kind of give this example. You see there's actually 3 water spaces, and I'll put Aquas right here. I have a character right here. Well, maybe this guy wants to have that terraforming ability. He can actually fill this water spot up for a round to prevent Aquas from taking advantage of this Might of Water ability. So there's a lot of strategy involved with that. Some of these even have lava, which is going to deal a damage to someone who's standing in the lava. Whole bunch of range of options, and this is with a specific character. So that is the terrain options. Additionally, we also have the new event cards, which will be changing some of the way the game's played. These are a whole range of events that you can add into the system to add even more replayability and options for the game as well. So that's super cool. Now, the final thing in terms of gameplay that I really wanted to hammer in on that I thought was super, super cool. I used to play, I don't really play much anymore, chess. I used to really love chess. I used to play also Magic the Gathering. And one of the things that they have in those systems that would kind of challenge you when you reached a point where you're like, I want to use my brain to think of different ways to experience a system. You had these challenge games where the board will be set up in a specific way, and you will be given a challenge of win in 2 turns, win in 3 turns, something like that. Well, this offers multiple ways to do that. So if I pull up these campaigns, here's the Bestiary's campaign. This is a narrative story, but also takes advantage of that system where you are going to be given a predefined setup with predefined damage or abilities being used, and it'll tell you your goal: exile Saxum in 1 turn. So how are you going to be able to use your abilities and your tools here to deal with this situation in 1 turn? There's a whole range of these for you to challenge yourself and try. And at the back of the book, there's also the solutions, so you can reference that and find out if you are correct. There's also the dual campaign, which is very similar, who has additional challenges for you to play with, but gives you some more variety and flexibility with that. This adds a lot of replayability and gives you a chance to really kind of dive deeper into some of the characters that are available in the game by letting you see and interact with characters that maybe you want to play on solo and learn how the game works, so that when you play with a bigger group, your 2 or 4 player games, you can kind of give an example. Well, this is what this character is really good at. I also really appreciated in the rule book, they've kind of tweaked some of the characters, they reworked a little bit of them, and they have now a difficulty meter of each of the types of characters, from your support, your utility, your defense characters, your strength characters, and gave them their tier levels in terms of the ease of use of using their abilities. So you have easy characters, medium ability characters, and hard ability characters. This is not a tier sheet in terms of the usefulness of those characters. It's how easy is it to use these characters in a game. So sometimes the more harder the character, it means the more situationally based abilities they may have, and they might be even really good, but you got to make sure that you're utilizing them in the proper situation, which will mean your setup of your other characters as well as the terrain that you're playing on. Effectively, that is most of the new things that are involved into the collector's edition. In terms of the insert, some of the things they've added is let me pull this up. They've added in a nice insert to control everything. So you have your characters go here, your tokens, your cards go here, your castles. So I really like that they have this custom insert. Everything fits perfectly nice inside here. And in terms of quality of life issues, in terms of helping us set the game up quickly, this sheet has all of the characters already in, well, not already, you got to place them in here, but they're numbered to tell you, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down, so that you're able to find a character. And when I say that, let's say we want to play with this character. In the bottom corner, this character is labeled 4. So I know where I can go here to find him. He's going to be labeled right here in 4. Alternatively, on the back side of all the tokens, you have the front side of the token. On the back side of the token is the character's name as well as that additional number. And their abilities also have the character's name and their number, so they're easy to replace back into the storage solution. And make sure you know exactly who they are referencing if you're having difficulty referencing them just based off the art. I'm going to finish this video basically giving you my final thoughts. Bestiary of Sigillum was a real joy to play, and I very much enjoy this in my collection. I have kind of found this very similar to other battler games, skirmish games in my collection, most notably Guards of Atlantis 2. When I'm playing the game, it's a little bit more combat focused and focuses more on utilizing these abilities rather than the speed of the cards. I cannot stress enough, if you are a skirmish player who enjoys a brain burner game, figuring out the best way to play your champions that you've been given, this is one you don't want to miss. Now, this will be released at GenCon, so if you're going there or if you're looking for that retail release, I definitely check it out. Otherwise, I'm going to be shouting this from the rooftops. I really did enjoy this game. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys tuning in and viewing my videos, subscribing, liking the shows. That really helps me grow in the YouTube algorithm. So I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.